So, this last couple of weeks, I have been thinking a lot about how I learn and how I can become a better learner. And amongst different classes and amongst the assignments we've had in Ed 200, I've been thinking a lot about structure and how important structure is to our ability to learn. Specifically because, I feel like I've had some classes that have had a very nice structure to them, and because of that, I've known the path that I was supposed to go down. I've known which steps to take to continue to learn and grow. And on the flip side, I've had teachers whose, teaching philosophy is kind of just throw everything at you and see what sticks. And I often find myself asking myself, what's the point? What am I supposed to learn from this? And so I've been really thinking about how I can learn in any of these situations, how I can become a better learner and hopefully through that process a better teacher. And so my three questions all kind of are based around this idea. So my first question I asked, because I read Elder Bednar's book in chapter 4 on a framework for gospel learning, I asked the question, how does Elder Bednar's framework for gospel learning apply to gospel subjects? And with this, I kind of thought about, not specifically the terms doctrine, principles, and applications, but what they meant and what they would mean in other subjects. And so I kind of took his own examples of, doctrine being the why. Why are we learning this? Why is this important? Then principles being, what is it? What is the commandment or principle that exists that backs up the why? And then the how. How can I apply this? How can I live this principle or this doctrine? And so I've kind of shaped it around and I've thought about how it affects us in other aspects. And so I've taken basically the same structure, but I think I've rearranged it ever so slightly. So instead of asking why first, I think the first question to ask is, what am I learning? I believe that that's always the first thing, because we just need to be thinking about what is the point? What are we going for with what I'm learning right now? What am I drawing out of this? Or what can I draw out of this? And I think when we ask ourselves the question, what, that really just kind of pinpoints what we should be focused on. And so it begins to prep our minds for learning. The second question is now, why does it matter? I actually think it's the most important question. I think there's no sense in learning things if they're never going to change us. Knowledge without action is vain. And so I think we need to think, why does it matter? And honestly, the answer is not always going to be some grandiose thing that's going to completely change our lives. Calculus that I'm learning right now in college isn't necessarily going to be something I'm going to be using for the rest of my life. But I do think it has purpose in helping me understand mathematics more as a whole, and in general become a better learner and a better teacher. And then kind of the last question is still that application, is how can I apply this knowledge to my life? And so once again, after asking why does this matter, you need to think, okay, now that I've figured out why this matters, I need to figure out how can I apply it to my life? How can I use this information to benefit me? So once again, going with that calculus, I'm not really going to use calculus in my daily life, I think. But how can I apply it? I think that I can really use that knowledge to understand why lower math concepts are influential. I think I can also use it to understand how technology is advanced and how mathematics relates to the actual world around us, even though I might not be figuring out those mathematics in my profession as a teacher. So that was the first question I had. The next question I asked was, how do I find what I need to change internally to become a better learner? I think it's a question we ask ourselves a lot, and sometimes we're more honest with ourselves than other times. I think the first key to it is just having a desire. Just deciding, I want to become a better learner, I want to find what's wrong with me, or what I can improve on. And from that point, that just opens up a world of possibility. I think the next kind of step in that isn't just saying, okay, I have a desire to learn, but being willing to step out of your comfort zone. Learn new things. Learn things that you might think aren't very applicable to your life, but just something different. I found that it's important to find a desire to study subjects that you usually aren't familiar with. And, in that process, it actually trains your mind to be always learning, which will benefit you in things that will really help your life. I think in addition to that, it's always important to pray and ask God, how can I be better? Drawing inspiration from a talk back in General Conference of October 2015. It was, what lack I yet? It's kind of always a question we ask ourselves. In that talk, it specifically talks about how we should, in sacrament meeting, ask ourselves, what lack I yet? And take that chance as a chance for inspiration during sacrament to think about how I can improve. But he even mentions in the talk, we can talk about this with God while we pray every night, while we pray every morning, just while we're thinking. It's a good question to always be asking ourselves if we want to find what we need to change to be better learners. And then I think the little keystone, the little cherry on top to really making this learning flourish, to really make it a part of us, is to share it and discuss it with others. I found that just by sharing things with my parents or sharing things with my wife or just other people around me, even if they are just little minor details, can bring up inspiring conversations that help this learning to increase tenfold. And so I don't think any learning is really complete, and no change inside of us is really complete until we've expressed that change to others, expressed that learning to others. And so I think it's always a little capstone to becoming a better learner. Next question I ask myself is, how can I develop my own framework for learning? Once again, I think I found a lot of overlap between this question and the one before it. When I first wrote them, I didn't think there was that much overlap, but now as I've been thinking about it, pondering and studying, I found that they relate a lot. So once again, the first step in this one is to find a desire. I think once again, this can be easy in some places and harder in others. I recently watched a video by a now fairly well-known teacher named Dan Myers. And he talks about how you need to train your mind to be perplexed. You need to always be seeking learning, always just being interested in the world around you. And he says specifically, find it in places that don't affect things in your life directly. So specifically for me as a math teacher, I shouldn't always be looking for math things. I should be looking for English things, for poetry. I should look for things in other sciences, like earth science. And just always having this mind that's just desirous to learn and always perplexed by the world, that really kind of is the first step in developing your own framework for learning. Past that, from an article that Sister Edgington shared with me on 6 steps for becoming a better learner, they kind of go through these other steps. And I thought they were all these next steps all fell underneath one umbrella of increase in learning through every medium and at every chance. And specifically that means, to read things, to watch videos, to listen to podcasts and interviews, and to learn about things you don't usually learn about. And so, in this modern day and age, there's such a flood of information that is just easily accessible and free. I think what blows my mind is through mediums like YouTube, podcasts, and different just websites that have plenty of articles on any subject you can think of. It's all free. And we have a better chance now more than ever to just learn wherever we are, especially if you have a smartphone in your pocket. And so, I'll be honest, I'm not a huge reader. I used to read a ton as a kid, but nowadays I find that reading just little articles online can help me grow a ton. On top of that, I love to watch YouTube videos. I will find myself going down holes in YouTube just on any subject, on video games, or on why our minds learn the way they do, the way they think that they do. There's just a flood of subjects and knowledge out there that we can learn from. And specifically, I did want to kind of highlight podcasts. Podcasts are a personal favorite of mine because I drive around a lot, and I find that we have a lot of downtime. That's good for pondering, but I think I get about a 50-50 split of sitting in silence and just thinking, and the other 50% of the time just listening to podcasts on any subject. And I'm to the point where I'm just running out of podcasts that I need to keep expanding the library of podcasts I've listened to. And so where I used to just listen to podcasts about card games that I liked, I started listening to science podcasts. And I've learned fantastic things that honestly don't directly relate to my life, but have increased my ability to learn. Things like one of the key components of modern medicine comes from this baby blue colored blood found in horseshoe crabs. And because it's such a scarce resource, they actually well, I shouldn't say scarce resource, because it's such a necessary resource for medicine, medical companies go out and they harvest this blood from crabs, every single year during mating season. It was just this very fantastic podcast just to learn about something that does affect my life, but I had no interest in learning about before. And then once again, I think the last step in my framework for learning, the one I've kind of, come up with, is once again, collaborate. Share with others. Learn from each other. Because I found that even when I'm sharing these things about, baby blue crab blood, that my wife has brought up things that completely are just out of left field that I didn't think about, where she'll bring up other medical subjects, other things she's heard about. And it's just opened up this other avenue for a whole other world of learning to occur. So, in conclusion, kind of what my entire mind has been wrapped around, because I know I've been kind of talking about a lot of different things. I think all learning just needs to begin with a desire. This is applicable to you as a learner, but also to us as future teachers, that we also need to realize that we can't force anyone to learn. That if we want to help other students, the students we teach have learning occur, we need to help them find a desire first, which I think puts a huge burden on us to make learning interesting, make it perplexing. Second, I think it's super important that learning has structure. It doesn't need to be super well developed, doesn't need to be very specific and very point focused from this point, this point, this point. But I think we need to make it so when we teach, it's important that other students can answer questions like, what am I learning? Why does it matter? And how can I use this knowledge? If we're not making it easy for students to understand questions like that, we're doing something wrong. Specifically, I think we lack structure in our learning and in our teaching. And then third, like I said, I actually kind of wrap this up. Teaching should carry structure. And so our learning needs structure, and then our teaching needs structure. I think they just go hand in hand, because the best learners are the best teachers. And so these are my ideas. Really, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think this is applicable to all of us as learners and as teachers. Thank you.